All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone, to the Abbey Museum's virtual programming highlighting Wabanaki arts. These virtual sessions are meant to highlight the ongoing work of artists from across Wabanaki territory and center artists' voice for larger audiences. Our next program is actually scheduled tomorrow. It's an in-person program at our Sur de Monts location over by the Nature Center. We're going to have the Brunowipskik Singers from 11 to 12:30. And this program in particular is presented by the Abbey Museum in collaboration with Acadia National Park. The program will be live streamed on the park's Facebook page, so be sure to look for Acadia National Park to catch that live stream if you can't be with us in person. And before going any further, I would like to acknowledge the land from which the Abbey Museum is broadcasting today by reading our land acknowledgement. We are in the homeland of the Wabanaki, the people of the dawn. We extend our respect and gratitude to the many Indigenous peoples and their ancestors whose rich histories and vibrant communities include the Abenaki, Maliseet, Mi'kmaq, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot nations, and all of the Native communities who have lived here for thousands of generations in what is now known today as Maine, New England, and the Canadian Maritimes. We make this acknowledgement aware of the continual violations of water, territorial rights, and sacred sites in the Wabanaki homeland. The Abbey is honored to collaborate with the Wabanaki as they share their stories. And again, I want to thank you for joining us today for our presentation. Today's program is being hosted by Melissa Peter Paul, who is an accomplished Mi'kmaq artist. Growing up, Melissa was immersed in cultural teachings and was surrounded by a family of basket makers. She began teaching and she began her artistic expression at a very young age, making regalia and beadwork, and is skilled both in traditional and contemporary styles. Melissa's exposure to other Mi'kmaq art forms led her to quillwork, a traditional skill that her ancestors and maternal grandfathers excelled at. Melissa is one of the featured artists at the Abbey Museum's newest exhibit, Stitching Ourselves Together, a show that looks at the history and reclamation of porcupine quill work among Mi'kmaq community members. I highly encourage you to check that out. I'm going to be dropping Melissa's website in the chat for you to learn more about her work. I want to invite all attendees to use the Q&A box. We've set aside some time at the end of Melissa's talk to answer some questions. So I'm going to be turning off my mic now and my camera. And Melissa, I'm handing it over to you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Star. Kwe, Nindaluisi, Melissa Peter Paul. I am a Mi'kmaq artist from Abegweit First Nation. I was born and raised here, and I'm still living in my family home. So I started doing quill work in 2014. I did a workshop with my cousin Cheryl Simon. She's a Mi'kmaq lawyer in Halifax. And now she's a professor now. So I did one of her workshops in 2014. And, you know, before that, my life was kind of unbalanced. You know, I struggled a lot. But when I picked up the quill work, it was like a moment I'm never going to forget. And it felt like this is the moment I was waiting for all my life. You know, when you're a little child and they ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? I never really had an answer because I didn't know what I wanted to be. I knew that it was important to me to be connected to my culture, but it was a struggle still, because when you're not connected to your culture, you know, you have all of these other different disconnected things happen. And so every time I would try to connect, there was always a barrier there. So, but when I picked up quill work, it felt like this is where I'm exactly supposed to be. Everything in my life led up to that moment of doing this workshop and picking up this quill and inserting it into the birch bark and doing the design and everything. I can still remember it. It was 7 years ago now. But when I think about it, it brings so much joy, and it just warms my heart because now I have the opportunity that I can share that moment with people, and it just fills my heart knowing that people have the opportunity to make that connection to their culture or to our culture, as well as a point of just more understanding too. So when I started doing quill work, it didn't happen right away. It took about a year after that is when I really started to pick it up. But my cousin had given me a kit, and I finished it right away during her workshop. And, I didn't need much direction. But the ancestors' presence, I felt that really strongly. And I felt like they were guiding me along. So it still makes me really happy when I talk about quill work because it's changed my life. It's been a huge part of my healing for me, for my family. So now in all of Mi'kma'ki, actually, I have people that will harvest for me. They'll tell me when they see a porcupine. People will help me get birch bark. So and sweetgrass too. I have so much help from a lot of people. Even I'm making connections with people that I've never even knew before, and they're helping me along in this journey. And I'm so incredibly grateful that because of quill work, it's allowed me to connect with so many people. I didn't go to art school. I felt my opportunity was to sit and learn from the elders, because at the time when I was learning quill work, we had so many elders that were passing here in Epekwitk. And I didn't want to miss out on those teachings and those conversations. And if they had things to pass on, some teachings, I wanted to be there to help them through that. So a lot of the times I have a lot of conversation with elders, even if it's just going out for a tea or whatever. It's always a strong moment that I have with them. Sometimes it's about quill work, sometimes it's not. There's always a teaching and everything. So in 2015 is when I really started doing more quill work. My cousin Cheryl asked if I was interested in learning more, and I said yes. Oh my God, yes, yes, yes. I did not hesitate at all. So she asked if I would be interested in joining an apprenticeship with her, so I would be learning directly from her. So my cousin Cheryl, when she taught me quill work, before she even started quilling, she was already studying and researching it 10 years before that. So she had a lot of knowledge that she had gained and earned. And she did it respectfully, and she followed all of the protocols. And when it was my turn to learn it, she had noticed that it was time for me to pick it up, and so we could pass it on to our next generations. So that summer in 2015, I joined her quilling. I went harvesting. We had lots of laughs, and it was such a memorable summer for me. It's probably a summer that I'm never going to forget, because that was the first summer I had to pluck a dead porcupine. So that's a moment you're never going to forget either. The job is not always pretty, but I really enjoy all parts of the art for quill work. So now I do all of the harvesting with me and my family. We harvest the birch bark, we harvest the sweetgrass, we harvest the porcupine quills, the spruce root, everything that we need to make art. My family takes part in that, and it's such an amazing feeling to see everybody out there, you know, gathering everything that we need. And we also gather all our medicines that we need for the year too. So my family will come across from New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, and even my sister, she lives in Maine. Every time she sees a porcupine, she always thinks of me, and that's probably one of the sweetest things I always hear. Hey, I just saw a dead porcupine and I thought of you, and I'm like, oh, thank you, thank you. You know, so in 2015, you know, I worked until probably October, working on quill work, and it was slow. I did a lot of small little pieces, so a lot of petroglyph designs, and then I took on a project, one of the biggest pieces I had done at the end of my apprenticeship, and it was called The End of Summer, because it was the end of summer when I started it, but I don't think I finished it until maybe September sometime. So I called it The End of Summer. And it's so funny because when I did put it into an exhibit for the first time, they changed the name of it to Eternal Summer. So I was like, oh, well, I guess so, because it feels like that summer never ended, because that's something I'm always going to remember. So that was pretty cool. So and so I have some pieces that I want to show you. So in 2020, I completed my first birch bark basket. You see it. So this took me about 60 hours, I think, and that's just construction time. There was also a whole day that I spent relearning math again, because in order to make the Chevron designs line up equally, so you don't know where the beginning or the end is, you're going to need to know math, because all of these things need to add up. And it's pretty snug. You can see that. So the lid, you can see at the top there, the lid is a little bit broken because I didn't use thick enough bark, but that's something I can fix on a rainy day. So it's not a big deal. So in 2016, I kept quilling here and there. I was pregnant with my youngest son, Gezik, and every time I wanted to do quill work, he would be kicking the table. So it was really uncomfortable. But I worked at a cultural center in Cavendish called Epekwitk, and it means the people of Abegweit. So one of the things I did in Epekwitk was I was supporting all the Mi'kmaq artists here on the island. And so they would come up and they would present all of their craft items, and I would be supporting them as they were selling and interacting with customers, and just getting them back into the art field again. Was an incredible feeling, because many of them have never picked up their art in many years. So to see them have that smile again, you know, because that cultural connection is so important to our people, to all Indigenous people. And I remember in my younger years, I fought hard not to feel that connection, and because it scared me, because you don't know where it's going to take you and the possibilities are going to be. But when I was ready, I was ready. I've always been a part of my culture growing up, but like most families, you know, we had a lot of trauma that happened. So there wasn't a lot of connections to culture as much as there should have been. But I'm so grateful for the teachings and the things that I was a part of when I was a child, because it just made me who I am today. And I feel incredibly strong as a Mi'kmaq woman, as a mother, as an auntie, as a sister. And I'm so grateful for the path that I was on. So in 2016, I had my little boy named Gesik. He's in the room playing right now. So if he runs out, I'm going to press pause right quick. So in 2017, I went to work right away after having my baby, and I helped with the cultural center in Cavendish. And I've kind of did a lot of training and was passing it on to the girls there, so they could take over my role as the coordinator there. So numbers were down in 2018. We were open again. And then my boss had approached me and she was like, you know, Melissa, you do great work with the artists. I'm like, thank you. You know, this is my heart and soul that goes into the arts, because I know that connection and I know the importance of that for identity, right? So she had told me, well, maybe you should take it on. And I was like, what do you mean? And she had said, you know, maybe you should take that leap and you should do your art. And I'm like, are you firing me? She's like, no. And she saw something in me that I didn't see, because at that point in my career, in everything, quill work was just a hobby. It wasn't anything else. It was, you know, not much people knew I did quill work then. We only had a few people here in Epekwitk that was doing quill work. So, and then when you look at all of the artists here on the island, you didn't see any Indigenous artists. That you didn't see many at all. So for me, you know, a young Mi'kmaq woman, doing something like taking art to the next level seemed impossible for me. Because I even remember growing up and as a little girl, when I would walk around, you know, in galleries, and I would wish, oh my God, I wish I could be in there. But I never seen any Indigenous people or any Mi'kmaq people that I knew that were doing this full time or as a career or educating. My mother did a lot though in here in Abegweit. She did a lot of work. So, and our family, you know, they did a lot of basket making and they went to a lot of trade shows, but all of the work that went into these baskets, you know, they got paid so little. And back then, it was enough money for them. But when you think about all of the hunting, the gathering of these materials and stuff like that, it wasn't much. When you think about a basket, you know, it might have fed them for the day or for a couple days, right? When they sold one. But the value of it wasn't there. It wasn't appreciated for all the work and knowledge that goes into these pieces, right? So part of my role and my job that I said I always wanted to do was be a part of revitalizing the art here in Mi'kmaq, in Wabanaki territory, in North America, everywhere, to be a part of revitalizing that and its true value. Because even though something could take me 30 minutes, but you have how many years of knowledge that it took me to get to that 30 minutes. So recognizing that early on and seeing how many of the artists here were undervaluing their work and undervaluing themselves and their knowledge that they had, that became one of my duties. So I worked with a lot of artists and I help a lot of people with pricing. And I just, that's just a part of what I do. My gift back to our people is, you know, help them with those stuff that they struggle with. because I was once there too when I struggled with my worth. So now I'm so happy that, when they pick that price and they actually sell it for that price, and they come back to me and they're all excited. And I said, no, 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 you deserved it. You deserved it. And I said, and if that person doesn't see the worth and the knowledge in that piece, then somebody else will. Just hold on, because it's important that you share that gift and that message. So that's what I'm doing here on the island. I'm just going to take a 1 minute break. So I'll be back in 1 minute. Just wait. Hi, I'm back. So in 2018, I took that leap and I started working on my business. And I jumped into a whole art world and business world that I had no sweet clue of. I was helping a lot of people start their businesses and do everything. But when it came time for me to do it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a lot of work, So I did it, and I've been running my business since 2018 or 19. Yeah, so this is what I do full time, and uh, it's a lot of work, but it allows me to have the flexibility to be there for my children as well. Both of them are on the autism spectrum, so sometimes they need me more than usual. So I have that flexibility of being able to work from home or work from wherever I need to work. I'm so grateful that I have a supportive family that helps me. My father lives close by, and my brother does too. And my sister, she just recently moved back to Alberta, where my mother lives. So I have a lot of support. So I've been published in a couple books so far. One of the most recent books that I was published in is called Uninvited. It's Canadian Women Artists in the Modern Moment. I did an interview with Mi'kmaq artist Jordan Bennett for an exhibit, McMichael Museum, I believe, and we were recorded and documented into this book. So you can find it on the Chapters or Indigo website. So I'm going to show you a couple pieces of my art. Hopefully you can see. So in 2015, after I finished the apprenticeship with my cousin Cheryl, I took on a project of my own. So this is the piece that I called Maui Omi. So I'm going to hold it up. So this is, I didn't actually sell that piece. It was in a couple exhibits, but it didn't move. There wasn't much quillers around in 2015 that were actively joining exhibits. So it didn't move. The quality is not that great, but it's still an important part of my education journey. I learned a lot from that piece, what size quills to use and how big of a hole to put into the bark. So, and how to align the bark so it's not going to rip. And so I learned a lot from that piece. Every piece that I make, I learned from it. Sometimes I'll do quill work, and I'd probably work maybe 18, 20 hours on this one piece. And at the very end of it, it might crack, right? So then I could try to fix it, or I could just take that as a learning opportunity, right? Maybe something didn't, or maybe it wasn't meant to be. So there's always a learning part in art. So, and then sometimes it'll just look good the way it is. So that's the joy of being an artist, if there's something that doesn't appeal to your eye, but somebody else is going to absolutely love it. So you never know. You never know. So one of the necklaces I'm wearing is one of the Chevron Designs. So this is my favorite design. You can see it's even tattooed on my arm as well. So the Chevron design is one of the oldest Mi'kmaq designs. You could even see them on the petroglyphs as well in Epekwitk. The Chevron designs is all along the quill boxes. So the Mi'kmaq people, you can see they used spruce root along the lids of their boxes with quills weaved on the side of them. That was my first one, so it's not that great, but it's still beautiful. So I completed my second quill box this year, I think. I did my second quill box. So my goal is to do about one quill box a year. It takes a lot of work, a lot of time. And, before I'm doing any pieces of art, I always make sure I'm in a good space. My home has to be clean. The energy has to be good. I always smudge before I start my quill work, before I start my designs, before anything. I'm always making sure that I'm taking care of my spirit. So when I put out these pieces, they have all good energy and good medicine attached to them. And I want people to feel that too. So my boys are amazing, and this is a way of life for them. And that's one of the most amazing feelings ever, to know that, mom's out getting birch bark, or I have to go help mom pluck this porcupine. So I remember on Treaty Day last year, my oldest son, he's 14, and he asked, is it a holiday today? I'm like, I don't know, it could be. And he says, what do you mean? I said, well, do you want to pluck this porcupine with me? It's Treaty Day, so we're gonna harvest. And he's like, oh, I think I'll go to school. So my oldest son is not into the smell of plucking porcupines, so that's fine. Well, my youngest one, as I was sitting there plucking these porcupines on Treaty Day, my youngest one was sitting beside me with his little cars, just playing. It didn't bother him at all. Like, he knew that this was the way of life. Like, this was our livelihood, right? So he knew the importance. At 3 years old, he knew the importance of the work that needed to be done that day. So I'm so incredibly grateful that my children get to be brought up this way. We have all of these gadgets and everything that's supposed to be connecting us, but is it really connecting us? Or are we getting disconnected, right? So I used to be really scared of bumblebees. I always had a hard time going out in the summer. Like, I had a phobia of bees. I would cry, I would scream, I would run, doesn't matter where or who or what was going on. If I saw a bee, or if I heard a bee, that's it, I'm gone. So a part of my harvesting is all during the summer, right? So there's always lots of bees around. So I remember being in a ceremony one time, and I'm praying hard, and this bumblebee was all around me, just landing on me. And instead of running, I prayed, and I asked the bumblebee to protect me, to work with me. So now when I'm doing all my harvesting, the bumblebees are not bothering me anymore. I'm not running, I'm not scared. If I hear them, it doesn't bother me anymore. So I truly believe, doing this quill work it's been a gift for me, and a huge source of my healing that I've done. So I'm so incredibly grateful that I get to share it with everyone. Oh, so I have one question I'm going to answer now. I don't know how I do it, but Suzanne asked, what do you use to dye the quills? So there's a whole process that goes into cleaning the porcupine quills, because if you don't clean them, they're quite stinky. I guess it depends how long the roadkill has been sitting there and how hot it is. But I use Rit Clothing Dye. So you can get the liquid version, or you can get the box. And I use a big pot and I fill up about this much of water and I put the dye in. So, because if you use a lot of water, the dye is going to be really light and it's not going to stick well. So you want to make sure you use lots of dye. So I do large batches of dye in whenever I do get to that point. Probably 3 or 4 times a year, I have to dye my quills. I have tons of bins that have been picked through with porcupine quills that I'm still picking through because, you know, part of our culture, you know, we only take what we need, right? So with these porcupine quills, I want to make sure that I can use them. And if I can't, then I'm able to pass these on to people who can. But I'm pretty good at within my designs using all of the sizes somewhere. So I hang on to a lot of my quills. So this year I wasn't able to harvest my birch bark because I had a health emergency. So my family members harvested some for me, but I really missed being out there and cutting that tree open. I miss that feeling, you know, it just feels like summer starting, you know, that connection to the land. And so I really can't wait until next year to harvest birch bark, because it's once you do it and, you know, it's an incredible feeling, the way it just cracks as soon as you cut the tree and you know it's ready. And then a lot of people ask me like, oh, how do you know? I said, you're going to know. The tree is going to tell you it's ready. You know, if you have to force it off, it's not ready. So I always make sure I put my tobacco down and sometimes the trees are not ready. I could follow protocol. I could do this. The fireflies could be out. It could be the right temperature. And sometimes that tree is not ready and you just have to move on. So we picked sweetgrass in front of my community, right where my grandmothers used to pick sweetgrass. So I always used to get my mother to help me do it because I wasn't able to identify the sweetgrass. I always struggled with knowing, like, is this it or is this it? Because there's another grass there that's identical to it and it kind of tricks you, right? So last summer, I picked the sweetgrass all on my own. And I remember being out there, I had my my music going on my phone and I just sat down and I spent hours just picking the sweetgrass and laughing and smiling and thinking about all of these stories, you know, that made me happy. It put me in such a good place. And I feel so honored that I was in that spot right there, you know, where my grandmothers used to sit and harvest sweetgrass, doing the exact same thing. It was such an honor. I have another question I'm going to answer. Do you use traditional colors or just what you like to work with? What is your inspiration of colors? So basically, sometimes a color will turn out exactly what the bottle shows, and sometimes it turns out to something completely different. I haven't done any root dye-in or like how they would traditionally dye the porcupine quills. I haven't tried that yet. Oh wait, I did. I did beets last summer in eel ground. So somebody gifted me like dried beets, and I dyed some quills with it. So it was kind of like a burgundy. But my favorite color to use with the Rit dye is tropical teal. So yeah, that's one of my favorite colors. I'm not sure I have a sample of it here, but you can see on my website, Star posted a link there in the chat room. With some of your work in the Abbey Museum exhibit. I was there a couple of weeks ago. I love the exhibit, but I'm sorry to say to get the names of the artists. Yes, I have one piece in there, I believe, right, Star? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's a
yeah.
framed piece. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a frame. A lot of my stuff is framed in a white frame because I'm still slowly working at the baskets. So this is my third, I think, third basket. I have 3 done so far. So 2 of them have owners, and this one I kept because it's my first one. So fast forward, we're in 2021. Last year was a busy year. I did a lot of harvesting. I usually need about 30 birch bark trees to get me through the year for the amount of quilling that I do. I have a website that has a lot of the small pieces on there. And also I set up for the Christmas craft fair here on the island. And so I sell a lot of small pieces there for the craft fairs. And I really enjoy it, getting to connect with people and talk about art. It is my favorite thing to do. I just love talking about art. I think the inspiration, what is your inspiration of colors? Oh, so when you look at the quill work, back then, it feels like the color placement was just so perfect. Like when I was doing quill work, and I post on Facebook or Instagram, and I would ask my followers, what color should I put here? What color should I put there? And one of my followers will say, well, why don't you look at the color wheel to see what works good? And I think I learned about the color wheel in high school, but that's just a blur. So I looked it up and I was like, wow. So I went back to look at all of my pieces and reference the color wheel next to the pieces. And everything that I had done with my quill work and balancing out what colors would look good with it was already on the color wheel. Like I followed along. So it's that guidance and that gift, that I'm so grateful to have, to be able to help me work and work with the quills and all of that. So I've been in 1, 2, maybe I think 5 or 6 exhibits so far. And every time I'm in an exhibit, it's like, wow, oh my gosh, I feel like a little girl again. Like it's such an honor to be able to put the art out there for other people to see, and for more people to learn and to know about quill work. That's always been one of my goals. I remember being a little girl and watching my mother make regalia at the kitchen table, and she always made me sit with her. And I never understood why. Like, why did I need to be here? Like, why couldn't I be playing Barbies, But my mother knew what she needed to pass on, and she knew the importance of that knowledge there and that cultural connection. So my mother is an incredible sewer. She loves to bead, and she's a basket maker. I have a basket here I'd like to show you guys. Just wait. So this is a mini hamper that my uncle Francis Jadis made. And he's the only one in our family that's continued on with the basket weaving. And it's such an honor when I do get to sit there with him and talk with him and to see the process of it, because we have no black ash here on the island. We usually have to travel to Maine to get some, but with the pandemic, you know, and it's been difficult, right? So this is where it all began with my grandparents, at least. So they did all of their basket weaving. Every sibling in the family had a different role in assembling the basket. Some of them had to go out and get the black ash. Some people had to pound the ash, and one of them would have to shave the strips, and somebody would have to weave the bottom of it. You know, every child had a different role in it. So early on in my artistic career, when I wanted to learn about baskets, you know, and that cultural, that identity, when I wanted to learn, when I talked to my mother, I would talk to my uncle or my other uncle, you know, they all had a different role in it. So it was quite interesting hearing the different perspectives of the basket weaving. And each role is so important, right? And you have to acknowledge and respect each of them. So my family, they're really good at making baskets, but I made a couple, and it's really hard on my fingernails. I think just what, like quilling, you know, once you do it enough that you're going to get used to it. So I've done basket making a little bit, but it's like, oh, you know what? I know enough to pass it on. And I think my role here is going to be passing on the quill work. So that's my job here. I really can't think about doing anything else. Because when I do quill work, when I see quill work, when I see a porcupine, I just have this smile on my face, you know. And I grew up, I was a grumpy kid. I swear I'm not grumpy, but just my look, right? But people can see it in me that I'm happier, I'm smiling more, and it's done a lot of healing for me. And I'm just so grateful to be on this journey and be able to share with all of you guys here too, and everybody that will be watching afterwards. Yeah. So is there any other questions? Okay, good.
We did have another question.
Okay.
And it had to do with museums and quill work that you visited in museums. And how important has it been to visit with the ancestors' work in museums and being able to see them?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I was reading two questions.
Oh, that's okay. It's how important has it been to visit with quill work in museums and visit with the work that the ancestors created?
Oh, so important. I remember when my cousin took me to my first visit to the archives. We spent the whole day there, and it was amazing. And it felt like I was sitting with my ancestors and having a cup of tea. You know, I was sitting there quietly and I'm holding these artifacts and I'm like, wow. And it's quite a connection, and it's important. So even though I've seen a lot of pieces, you know, there's still a lot I haven't seen yet, and that's that's my goal now. We have a collection here on the island that they let me come and visit and hold all of the pieces, and oh, it's an incredible feeling. Like, it's incredible. So there's a lot of museums that have reached out to me and told me about their collections and stuff like that. So and there's a lot of quillers here in Mi'kma'ki too. So getting to see their work and visit them and work with them, and it's just been it's a good feeling seeing all of the quill work make a comeback, because back then that was our main source of income, quill work.
I have a question about some of the public art you've been doing lately, and if you'd be willing to share a little bit with everybody about those kinds of projects that you've been working on and what inspired that.
Yeah, so things have been happening a little differently because of the pandemic. So when I was approached by this collective, and they said, we really want to feature you in Art in the Open. And I was like, great. And Art in the Open is an event at nighttime at downtown Charlottetown, PEI, where art is just all over the city. You have a map and you walk around, and so I was like, what can I do? Because my pieces are this big, right? Like, who's going to see this? And there's no way that I'm going to be able to leave something like this out unintended, right, at a night event. So they had told me, well, send us a couple pieces of your work. I'm like, okay, I can do that. I sent them, and they helped me make this beautiful installation of my quill work. They kind of just transition together. So I think Star can bring it up now. We can share it on the screen. So this is it. So these are all of my recent pieces of work that I have done, and they kind of just transitioned together, and it was displayed on the side of the province house in Charlottetown, PEI, which is the birthplace of Confederation, right? So this was on the side of the building through Art in the Open, and it was such a great feeling, to think how much was taken away from our Indigenous people, and to know that they're the ones that have passed on, the ones that we lost, and they could be looking down on us, seeing like, wow, there's our art, and that's such a good feeling. Yeah. So I'm doing different things with art, and I'm very like I always thought I would just be into the quill work part, but when people approach me and they're like, hey, what about this? And sometimes I take their suggestions. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm good. But this one I'm glad I did, because it's going to be in another exhibit as well. So it was so nice to share it with you guys. Yeah.
Earlier, you were talking about how the arts are connected to identity for you. And I was wondering if you could share why you think there's that connection between the arts and identity in your life.
Oh, so I was at a gathering last weekend, and the presenter had, I guess, made sense of everything that I've been feeling when I do quill work, and when I smile, and when I talk about quill work, and it's so hard for me to put these into words, because that's something that I'm not really good at. I learned early on that in this art world, I wasn't good at verbally expressing myself. What I was good at was expressing myself through the art, right? So I take great pride in that. So she talked about, when you're picking up that porcupine quill, you have like a cell memory, right? So that's from the ancestors, and that's healing you, and that's healing all of the trauma and everything, and it's just waking up those cells. So I did a workshop last weekend with 100 people that have never done quill work before, and every single one of them completed their piece, and every single one of them did it so well. Like, I was so proud of them. um so I truly believe, it wakes up that cell and that memory of our ancestors. And so that identity piece is so, that's what I firmly believe in, and I feel it, and it's so important to me that I get to share that with people. And almost everybody that does the workshops, they feel it too. And it's very powerful, because as a child, I ignored it, right? People were like, oh, you're good at this. Oh, no. I just, or you're a good dancer. No, I'm having a bad day. Like, when I was younger, I fought hard against it. And that's just trauma, right? That's just, fighting against the good. But now I embrace it. I know what's good for my heart and my children and my family. And, so yeah, so that's the identity piece, that it's just very powerful. And once you let that connection in, you're gonna feel it, and it's feels good.
We have another question.
Okay.
This person's asking, protocols seem very important to your process. Can you share more about this?
Oh, I'm not able to share protocols on a webinar, but thank you for being interested. And those are just different teachings, different ways. So thank you for the question, though.
Maybe you could tell us about some of the apprenticeships and fellowships that you've done, and how important those have been in your career.
So I had the opportunity to go to art school. But at the time that I had applied to art school, there was a lot of elders in our community that were sick, and that they were passing on, or, and when I walked into the school, I didn't feel it. This was not where I was meant to be, right? So I take a lot of time sitting with my elders and meeting new elders, and that's been a part of my education journey. And I don't get a transcript or credits or anything, but what I do get is a lot more meaningful for me, for my journey. I'm not trying to, but for my journey, this is where I need to be right now, and this is what I need to be doing. So yeah, so that's basically, that's what I do. I read a lot, I pray a lot, I spend a lot of time with elders and knowledge keepers. It's not only elders, right? It's knowledge keepers. There's some people that are younger than me that have great knowledge that help me along in this journey, and that's important too. So, but I do feel that disconnect in the art world, being Indigenous and not having that, I guess that way there's a little disconnect there. But I take pride in the journey that I'm on, and I honor it. And someday maybe I'll maybe I'll do art school, but I'm so happy where I'm at right now. So the apprenticeship, it was so important to me. And I had somebody working with me the beginning of this year, and she was learning quill work. And she was carrying a child too, and she could feel the baby kicking the table. And I'm like, it's because he likes it. You're doing good. He likes it. He's happy what you're doing. So she completed her first medallion. We were working together. So then now she's always messaging me, hey, let's do quill work. So that transfer of knowledge is a huge, huge education piece for me. And yeah. Any other questions?
That is it. And we are at 5 o'clock. So
Oh,
thank you
nice.
so much.
I didn't think I could talk that long.
No, this is an incredible program. I want to thank you for being with us today. And I want to thank everybody in the audience. And for those who are going to be watching this later, thank you all so much. And I want to say, please visit Melissa's website to learn more about her. And she has a lot of incredible articles online as well and videos. And please come to the Abbey if you have a chance and come see her work in person and see the work of the ancestors and other people that have been part of this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.